some things happen. Sometimes it's for the best, sometimes it's not. But today it looks like we had an audio issue. But we're back. We're live. It's the off season. There's drama. There's drama on my stream. There's drama in cycling. Is USA Cycling renewal situation going to be something that's going to be a fiasco? Chloe Dygert, is she the new Quinn Simmons? Froome, is he beyond reproach? NTT gets their Assos saved. Yes, it's Friday, the 18th of November, episode 213. And this time, I hope we are back. I tried to stream here, and someone came on and said, no sound. Checked it. I think it's good now. So hopefully it's back out, and you guys are able to check this out and delete the first episode. You won't even know what happened. If you're out there online with me on YouTube right now, go ahead and comment. Tell me if you can hear me to make sure that we are good to go. I think we made all the corrections we needed to. Do apologize for that if you were checking out the first one. NTT, they are saved by Assos. Assos being a clothing company. NTT was set away to go away in the end of 2020. They couldn't find a sponsor. Bjarne Riis was brought in. With Bjarne Riis, they were supposed to be able to save the team. It looks like all was going to be bleak. He went away, and then boom, Assos came in and put in some money, and they're able to save the day. Doug Ryder, the world team manager, had some comments out there. He said, we're really, Assos said, we're really motivated by the opportunity and to support the team during the COVID crisis. And Doug Ryder had been searching for a new sponsor since the start of the year. In September, it was revealed that NTT would be stepping away from the team altogether after just one season as the lead sponsor. The news of the departure put the team in serious jeopardy. Several high-profile riders, including Michael Valgren, went away. I think he went to EF, Van Bosenhagen, Ben O'Connor, all signed for rival teams. I think Bosenhagen sounds good, Frank. Thanks. Sorry about that, buddy. We'll just restart from the beginning. Bosenhagen, I think, went to NTT or Total Direct Energy. Not sure where O'Connor went, but also you had your buddy old Ben King. He was signed up with NTT, didn't make the venture on with them. They were unsure what they were doing. He's gone over to Raleigh, and we're kind of excited to see him. You know, they picked up Joey Roscoff. That team has been escalating and moving themselves up in the world as well, doing some Euro stuff. And if we get back to racing here in the U.S., hopefully they will be able to kind of push in USA Cycling. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But anyway, really good to hear that. One thing that's really interesting that I didn't notice here, we'll have from the Assos CEO, we have really enjoyed being a part of the mission-driven team. Quebec's slogan that bicycles change lives could not inspire us more. The Assos has always been and continues to be deeply entwined in professional cycling. We really moved by the opportunity to support the sport during the COVID crisis by keeping this important team part of the peloton, said Assos CEO Derek Bouchard-Hall. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that Derek Bouchard-Hall was the CEO. He had been with Shackley. He was a pro racer back in the 90s, a little bit in the 2000s, I believe. A few years ago, he was the CEO of USA Cycling, and now he's moved on to Assos. And good for him. I did not know that info until I just read it here. And I look forward in welcoming new partners to Team Quebec Assos as we plan to prepare for the new season in 2021 in a world that has been so heavily impacted by the pandemics, Doug Ryder said. Yeah, good. So I'm happy to see that another team has been able to stay in the mix. I didn't think we have anything for CCC. Like, you know, it's especially at the economics this time of year, the pandemic is obviously an issue, and good to see a company stepping up. Bicycles, though, I mean, people are going outside, they're riding their bikes. You know, companies, bike shops are seeming to be doing okay at some point. You may not have consumers with money anymore, but I guess we'll worry about that when the time comes. Speaking of USA Cycling, they have their license fee. It's like, I don't know, for me, it's like $130 or something like that. It's really gone up, but they have an auto renew system. So this time of year, they start sending emails out and saying, hey, you know, we're going to auto renew your license for the coming year. And you can obviously check out of that, which I've done last several years. And then they auto renew it anyway. So I've heard this from a lot of people where they check the auto renew button, take it off, and it happens anyway. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens next year. And then people are saying, you know, do I even auto renew? Do I even renew next year? Are we going to have cycling? So look, 2020, the last race I think I did was somewhere in February. There's supposed to be a land park for us here in Northern California. That didn't get happen in March because of COVID. cycling was taken out, and some people were wondering, hey, are we going to maybe get a partial, maybe a partial refund or something like that for your license for 2020? Well, no, that didn't happen. And at the point, I remember talking to Mike Sayers, and he's like, funds go to help support directors and coaching and other stuff. There's other things still going on, to support the federation. So he wasn't too interested in getting some sort of rebate back. And I was fine with that for 2020. But do you go forward for 2021? That's actually the big question. One, we'll see what happens with the auto renew thing. I think that's a big problem because a lot of people are aware of it. I go on the website myself and I try to check the box and it just says NA. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. So it'll be interesting to see if other people have any of those problems and if they get charged anyway. I think me personally, I could be in the clear because this summer I got one of my debit card fried. It's the one I use for that. And they sent me a new one. It's got a new expiration date. So I think I'm okay. They're probably not going to be able to charge. But I'll be interested to see if others who've checked the box or unchecked it, or I can't even check or uncheck it now. It just says NA and don't even have that ability. So I'll be interested to see kind of what that situation takes out. Now, that's the auto renew. And I think USA Cycling is aware of this problem. Their website sucks. And maybe this is their ploy of, look, you just get it. You have people automatically pay. It's going to be harder for them to get that back. We can at least sustain our development and keep going forward. Maybe that's it. Or maybe their developers just suck so much on the website side that they're not really going to do much about it anyway, or they don't even know. But then there's the other issue. Do you renew? Okay, this is completely different question. I'm sure USA Cycling would appreciate you renewing, and they're probably hopeful to do some races in 2021. For you though, what's the reason for giving your money to USA Cycling? What's the reason that they exist? And with that in mind, I mean, they're cycling development, licensing, and race promotion, or getting people involved in races, I guess, in the sport of cycling. There's benefits to being a part of USA Cycling. Personally, I might give to them willingly. Somewhat of a private organization. I think they get some government funds. I'm not quite sure on all that. They have the licensing. So the licensing portion is somewhat, tries to keep it fair, right? By having your different categories, being able to have people compete fairly. They have rules set out. You're able to upgrade it as you are. Coaching, I think they offer some of that. They definitely have, the officials. There's sanctioning races. There's all good parts of it. You don't get to have Lance Armstrong as an example come and do your races because he's been banned from the sport. So, there's a lot of good parts of that. And there's the race promotion side. And when I say race promotion, I don't mean there's local promoters. I think USA Cycling does make the big amateur national races. But them in promoting the sport of cycling or licensing for venues, right? And I don't think, to me, that's the reason I'm not going to, one, let them auto renew my license. But two, I think that's where I'm going to possibly not pay for them because, and I'm probably on the outs as far as hear about myself. We had some racing in Florida this year, a little bit in Georgia. Some people went down there. I'm not sure if those were sanctioned USA Cycling races, but USA Cycling has really done nothing to get cycling back on the board. And what's one of the best things that you can do for yourself for staying fit and for staying healthy is doing bike racing. Some people are like, look, it's just bike racing. What's more important? We got this pandemic thing going on. I get it. We had the Tour de France. We had the Vuelta. We had the Giro. There's gravel races being taken place. I mean, you can definitely do some things, and I think you can be healthy. But at this point, even with the 3 Grand Tours, we had restrictions that appeared to be pretty good as far as the outcome there. Riding your bike outside itself is dangerous. I mean, there's more danger probably of riding your bike than the COVID situation. With that said, though, I think you could put measures in place to keep everybody happy and have some action we want to do. Be an advocate for health and for healthy living. That's kind of the whole idea. I mean, cycling shops are still out there. They're still able to be essential workers. And the best defense for your immune system, I think, is to actually be outside, riding your bike and getting plenty of vitamin D. Also, there was that study that came out, the Belgian study earlier, that freaked everybody out. Someone's snot rocket on the bike, and it shows how it just infects everybody out. I don't think that, well, first of all, there was a lot of problems with that study. I didn't go into it too much at the time, but it's all done like in a vacuum. So you have crosswinds, you have all kinds of other factors that play a part, And so the study got ripped apart by a bunch of scientists anyway. With that said, you really need to be exposed for a little bit longer periods of time, that is my understanding. And we haven't seen the problems from the group rides that I've seen, races that we've had in the States, the gravel rides, the tours, the big grand tours. So maybe that's not a problem. So, if USA Cycling wants my money for 2021, they need to see what they can do about promoting bike racing going forward and getting us out there, getting more. Look, cycling right now is taking off once again. The bike shops are exploding. They're selling bikes like crazy. Assos was able to put money into NTT because they're probably selling a bunch of clothing extra. Let's get these people that are into cycling, let's get them into racing as well. So USA Cycling, maybe you can do that. And once again, I don't mind any of this diversity stuff because you're getting people into the world of cycling. That's perfectly great. Matter of fact, that's encouraged. But there's just a lot that I don't know what USA Cycling is doing other than just running a really terrible website. And with that in mind, a lot of guys would like to see what they get for their, and no offense, but kind of the road racing thing is dying. You're getting the big, gravel races and other things going on. So with that said, maybe this isn't a perfect time for USA Cycling to kind of throw in the towel. I think you should become an advocate for bike racing, and even in this weird world we have right now, be an advocate for putting on some races and see what we can do. Even if it's that shitty old thing out in the middle of a business park, right? Everyone parks in one spot. You can totally do some things and get some racing going. And the fact that they haven't, okay, then we'll see where my money goes. Chloe Dygert, do you want to ruin your podcast, Tyler? Yes, I do. And so therefore we will talk about Chloe Dygert. They came for Quinn Simmons and now they're coming for Chloe. Will they come for you next? Chloe Dygert. So when the whole thing with Quinn Simmons came about, there was a lot of hubbub online. I remember reading a bunch of tweets, not interacting because I'm not crazy. A bunch of tweeting about Quinn Simmons, how he's a hateful person. And then they threw into the mix because the only other person I think that they knew that was high profile, that was a Trump supporter, was Chloe Dygert. So therefore, hey, she's evil as well. And with that, people started to scour her Twitter account, and they found that she had liked some tweets. And those tweets evidently were pretty nasty. Well, we'll go over them, whether they are or not. When Chloe seemed to be more reserved than online than Quinn Simmons, I mean, if you have to, she's got more of a brain, I think, maybe on this respect. She's a little older. She's just a little bit more mature, so she wasn't joining in all the vitriol going back and forth. And she wasn't trying to be a troll, and she wasn't trying to do anything else, but she definitely has her mindset. She lives up there in Idaho, and just a little bit different of a life. And by the way, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Biden supporter. People like to think of themselves in these binary aspects. I have a lot of arguments with two of my good friends, and one of them tends to think that I'm always a right winger because he's a left winger. I just have a lot that I don't agree with him on. It doesn't mean that I'm that other side either. So people have a hard time understanding that. So I can criticize the taking on of Chloe Dygert and basically her wrong think as everyone's going on here. And it doesn't mean that I'm a hateful person myself. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything she says. It just means that I don't think that the treatment she's getting for clicking a box and thinking a different way. And what did she do? So evidently, she didn't tweet it herself, but evidently she liked a tweet that said something along the lines of, white privilege doesn't exist. I don't know. Biden just got elected. He's a white guy. She also had an audacity to like a tweet stating something like, men who self-identify as women are not actually women, just as children who self-identify as mermaids are not actually fish. Are mermaids fish anyway? Okay, maybe that's going down the wrong road there. But now, agree with her or not, why does anyone care about those kind of things? I mean, it was interesting during the World Championships. I was comparing her times to some of the men because I thought that was interesting. One, she's not going to beat the men. She was off to them for a few minutes, but until she wrecked, she was doing better than some of the men. And the woman that won, Vandenbergen, I think it was, she beat some men as well, and it happens. But and the more likely than not, if you put the men in the women's field, you're going to have a man win those things. So look, we have some issues that we need to contend with, and we've talked about this, about transgender riding with women. It's always the men riding with the women. So if she's got a problem with that, wouldn't she maybe be an ultimate feminist, saying that women are their own and they don't need men to come in and compete? Merman. There you go, Matt. Thanks. That they don't need, I mean, what? You had a Bruce Jenner become a woman, and he was instantly like Woman of the Year. I mean, he had been in this game not very long, and he was suddenly winning at it. I think that's not a very feminist point of view. Regardless, taking some of this as a joke because I think it's ridiculous. What ended up coming out was she had to do an apology online, a mea culpa. Canyon SRAM came out, and they also were like kind of ripping her, even though they had just hired her. All these tweets and these likes had been done well before they hired her. So that was kind of stupid on their part. Do your own research if you think this is a problem, and then you look like kind of the crappy people after that. Matt, I'm going to put this up on here because you deserve to have a little bit of a note on that joke. So Canyon SRAM, they took offense to this. I thought that was kind of lame itself. But, I looked at her Twitter, or she put it up on Instagram that I saw, and I thought it was pretty cool. Reggie Miller, basketball legend, made a comment. They're like, hey, we all learn from things. You're great. And just kind of a positive way to respond to her. He's big into cycling now. And he was just like, hey, great to hear that. Move forward, positive, da-da-da-da. Oh my God, the vitriol that people were taking at him, it was kind of humorous because it was, should we go down this length of men can have babies, men can have periods? It was all just weird, convoluted stuff to go along with the fact that she liked some tweets, whether she agrees with them, whether she does or not, I don't know. But the point on all of this is really, it's the wrong thing. And how we all perceive this is just a cyclist. And I know people get mad at me for just saying it's just, but you got to kind of talk about this. These are just people out there. Do we want to push it to the point where they should not be allowed to have a job? I guess that's what it is. And it's just cycling. I know, but people make whatever, agree with it or not. Cold hard facts, doesn't matter. Law's the way we are. Good luck, Chloe Dygert, in 2020. Welcome to the fact that you are a little bit more high profile. A friend of mine, he said this privately, so I don't want to say anything, but he's just like, hey, I'm glad I'm not a famous person. Well, true, but it doesn't matter. I mean, are you sticking up for Chloe at any point? And I don't mean like sticking up for points of view, because what are the two things they had here? These are opinions, right? White privilege doesn't exist. I don't know. Who cares? Well, I'm sure someone does, and I'll probably get beat up for that. But these are just opinions she has, and I guess we are not allowed to do that and stand up for someone's right to think differently. I was listening to a podcast. Ira Glass, he was one of the main founders of the ACLU, talking about the Skokie, Illinois case with the neo-Nazis at the time defending their right to do it. And he's like, everyone thinks they're for free speech, but they're really only for free speech that affects them. And that's kind of what we're looking at here. Anyway, good luck, Chloe. Eddy B passes away. And anybody know who Eddy Borashewitz is? Borashewitz. That's who it is. He's a legendary coach. He helped push USA Cycling into the spotlight in the 1980s and beyond. He was from Poland. He was kind of into swimming, and he got into cycling as a junior. Then he didn't really make the national team because somehow it came out that his dad was anti-communist. Back in then, part of the Eastern Bloc, that didn't go well, so he kind of got shunned. But he really got big into coaching. And next thing you know, I think in the 76 Olympics up in Canada, he was up there, and he kind of moved down to the U.S. He met the head of USA Cycling. And I think in 78, he started working for USA Cycling. He worked for them through mid-late 90s. But he was a big part of USA Cycling. He just recently passed away. He was in his 80s. Evidently, he had a little complication from COVID. So, he's right in that wheelhouse of 80-plus-year-olds who are dying from COVID, especially in California. He lost his house in SoCal in one of the fires a few years ago, lost a bunch of cycling memorabilia. People donated a bunch of money. I think he rebuilt the house. I saw some quotes about him here. People were talking about him. His lack of English meant he had to use the son of a Polish friend, another cyclist, as a translator when he was first starting. And he said, it really cuts your authority when you want to be commanding and you have to speak through a 12-year-old. I thought that was funny. He told one member of the national team that they were overweight and observed that America was, quote, a land of fat people. That's not untrue at all. What's the most interesting to me? He helped coached Greg LeMond kind of came up during that whole time. He said he discovered Lance Armstrong, not Chris Carmichael. I guess there's a little riff there. Chris Carmichael, that's an interesting story where he took he made a lot of money post Lance and kind of being the person, but I think we all know it was Michele Ferrari that was actually the coach, and he was just allowed to kind of be this beard, so to speak, for Lance Armstrong. Made him have a little more credibility in the States. Chris gets to write a bunch of books, gets to make a bunch of money, and then the underhanded real coaching was being done by Michele Ferrari. Anyway, Eddy B, he 1980, he was real big, because remember, he came on to USA Cycling around in 78. He was real big with the USA Cycling team for the Olympics. Okay, remember, 76? 84 was the Olympics, sorry. 1980, now I'm getting all confused here, but there was the one, I think it was the 80 Olympics that we didn't go to Moscow, and then 84 was in LA. I think that's how it works. And so we didn't go to Moscow. A lot of the Russians and Soviet bloc didn't come to ours, the one in LA, but we won gold medals. Alexei Greywall, Connie Carpenter, Rebecca Twigg, a bunch of silver medals that were won as well. Steve Bauer, even for Canada. Anyway, USA Cycling, they did very well. And he at one point was saying, look, we really have to be able to compete with these other teams, and they're doing some different things. And one of the things they were doing was blood doping, which became pretty famous, later on. Tyler Hamilton, Lance Armstrong, Operation Puerto, that kind of thing. When they could no longer do the EPO because they were getting tested for it, they went back to the old school, which was blood doping, which we'd used in the Olympics. So as it was with that, Eddy B was kind of part of that. Now, it wasn't illegal at the time, but was definitely looked bad against. And I think they had he had a 1 month suspension for it. But reading kind of a little bit about that was this guy named Edmund Burke. So is it Edmund Burke? Someone Burke. And I have one of his books. He was real big. He was kind of like Mr. Friel, Joe Friel. He was like him with a lot of stuff about new technology for training and stuff in the 80s. And he was really the one. He was taking some of the USA Cycling people in this, hotel rooms and doing their blood doping. And I don't know that Eddy B was so much on board with it, but he was, whether he knew about it enough, I don't know. He definitely knew. He definitely knew what was coming of it. Anyway, he died. I don't know. I think he might have been very useful for USA Cycling. Obviously, we did well in the Olympics without the Eastern Bloc. But I think he started to change how people perceived, the cyclists themselves, how they took the sport and how they perceived themselves in training. And then, of course, Greg LeMond comes along and kind of breaks all norms and just a different facet of rider. So Eddy B, never met him. I saw him a few times, heard him talk. Definitely had an accent. Cyclocross. Cyclocross is coming up this weekend here in California. Hopefully, I know we're getting shut down as far as COVID stuff. They have a curfew from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. So I don't know if it's stronger during the night, but at least the racing itself is not during that time. So they're having one at Lakewood Church in the 21st, and so we'll see if that takes off. So check it out. I think it's Time Your Race. You can look for the cross racing coming there. So in in cycling right now, there's this coach Freeman, I think is his name, and he is kind of coming unglued with investigations, and he was one of the doctors for Sky at the time, and so there was this. Let's see if we can share the screen here. Bobby Julich evidently was implicated with him, and so Bobby Julich has kind of come out and made some comments. And the headline is maybe a little bit more shocking than the actual news itself. Julich, it's idiotic to think there is anything suspicious about Chris Froome. Former coach, a Sky coach, dismisses concerns raised by Sutton and repeated at Freeman hearing. So what was interesting, they were talking about this motorcycle trip that Chris Froome took and how it was very suspicious. Now, you read that and you go like, come on, there's nothing suspicious about Chris Froome. I think we all know that could be some suspicious things. We've seen stage 19 of the Giro a few years ago, which was enough to put everyone kind of on their heels. However, Bobby Julich, I just thought this was an interesting thing here. In an interview with the Times, Julich insisted there was no mystery beyond Froome's trip across the Franco-Italian border on a motorbike. Now, what this was happening, Froome was new to the team. Bobby Julich was coaching it. And Froome was coming up. He didn't have the money that everyone else did. And so this is what Julich says. It was early 2011, and Chris was a young rider living in Italy. I was based in Monaco and was working with Richie Port, then a Saxo Bank down there. Sky had me keep an eye on this kid, even though they weren't sure he was going to get a new contract at the end of the season. And, if he hadn't done well that year, I think that's when he would have supposed to be signing for EF. Well, then it was Garmin. Then Chris suddenly contacts me and says he's selling everything and he has to move to Monaco to work with me. From my notes, it looks like it would have been late January. I was like, wow. He's not being paid much. He'll have to live in a box, but he was committed. Anyway, what I think was April, he shipped the stuff in a truck and then rode his motorbike. It was like an off-road bike. He couldn't really use it on the highway to Monaco along the coastal roads. The bike was his prized possession, but the first thing I had him do was get rid of it. I don't think he ever rode it again. Anyway, I believed in what they were trying to do, and I never heard anything that was come out in this Freeman hearing about testosterone patches. That's all been a surprise to me, said Julich, who was critical of Freeman's handling of Froome's struggles and the tropical disease bilharzia. I have the notes from the time when I first met Chris and Sky, said he was sick a lot. I felt let down by Dr. Freeman. He was in Manchester and wasn't paying attention to the things I was seeing. I guess he wasn't one of Sky's main riders, being Chris that was. One day Chris's numbers could be good, if not better than Brad's. And the next he could barely scratch himself. I got him to see a specialist and sort things out. All interesting parts there. So it was just interesting that you saw that the initial thing is it's idiotic to think there's anything suspicious about Chris Froome. Dig a little deeper, and that's an interesting story that's going to play itself out. I think the more we have transparency on a lot of these things, and look, back in the day, you didn't have doctors on teams, and then you started to bring doctors on, and that was thought to be suspicious. Then they're like, well, no, you just want to make sure everyone's healthy. Okay, that's fine. And you're right. It's good to make sure that riders and the teams, their investments are kept healthy. And talk about it here. If Chris Froome have some sort of disease or something that he doesn't know about, then maybe that's the case. But also doctors that aren't really on the up and up, or you start getting paid a lot, or you think that maybe it's saw this with the Lance thing, where you're starting to say, well, look, it's actually healthier if we administer all the narcotics and everything else we give to them to make sure that they're doing it correctly. Okay. I don't know. Well, this will be interesting to see what comes out of this Freeman thing. Mailbag, don't really have anything. I appreciate all you guys' comments on anything you have. Someone wrote on our page the other day, what the F is this? That was on one of our old, I don't know what, dope cycling commentary. Maybe that's what, and I mean by dope, I mean like hip. Is that what I mean? That's all we have for today. Sorry about the sound flub to begin with, but you know what? I think we'll make it work. Hope you guys get a good ride in this weekend. We're supposed to be having, I'm looking outside, and the weather seems to be pretty good. So I think I'll go home and do a ride and get some in before it gets too crappy. Hope you get to do some racing too. So let me know if you guys are being able to do any auto renew and what that whole situation is with your USA Cycling. Because like I said, they're going to nab you for a few $100s and you may not be able to do anything about it. And then they might not have a race. See ya.